Good evening. Good evening. Happy Thursday. Good evening and happy Thursday to you. Happy Thursday. Good evening. Let me know if you hear me with no problem. Um, if the connection is good, let me know. Say something. Good evening. Happy Thursday. Happy Thursday. Good evening to each and every one of you. We have about 2 minutes before we get started on this quick conversation. Let me know if the connection is good. Let me know if the connection is good. Hmm. Good evening, everybody. Happy Thursday. I'm going to be doing a teaching on, I'm going to be doing some pivot conversations. I'm doing teachings on pivoting during this time. So just let me know if the connection is good. I'm not sure. I'm trying a different spot and I may have to pivot to another spot. So good evening. Thank you so much for joining in. Hey, Lakeisha, good evening. Is the connection good? Is it going fine? No buffering or anything like that? Let me know. Is the connection good? Let me know. Is the connection good? Like I said, I'm trying a different spot. Oh, it might be my phone. I don't know. Um, Good evening. Is anybody else having problems with it buffering? Is it doing that to anybody else? It is buffering. Mary, you say it is buffering. If so, I will jump off and go to another spot. Um, Let me know. Is it buffering? Are you having problems? How's my connection? Because I don't know. Evidently, it must be buffering because of what I'm seeing. Oh, it's good now? Okay. Good now. Anybody else? Anybody else having problems? Is the feed buffering or are we good? Anybody else? Can anybody else say something? Is it buffering or are we good? Let me know. If so, I'll make the adjustments and move to another spot. Thanks, Prince. I appreciate that. I don't have my struggle ponytail and my hair is growing, so maybe that's it. I don't know. All right, everybody has a good visual. It's not buffering. Thanks, Lakeisha. Thanks, Prince, for that feedback. We are going to go ahead and get started with this pivot conversation. First of all, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for jumping on the line with me tonight. Or if you are, maybe not you all that are on live, but thanks to you all who are watching the replay. I'm not sure if I made it clear during the last segment, but the teachings this month will be focused on one word, and that one word is pivot. Thanks, Carlos, for the thumbs up. You may be wondering, what's the purpose and why should I listen? Why should I listen? Well, I'm glad you're wondering that. And the purpose of this is to help you pivot and navigate through changes in your life. Whatever that change may be, whatever it may look like. It may be something as simple as implementing something new into your daily regimen, or something as complex as a career change or starting a new business. So something as simple as, hey Melissa, something as simple as adding an additional challenge to your workout regimen, or something as complex as navigating through a relationship status change. Change is inevitable, people. Change is inevitable, and change will happen, whether it's forced, whether it's unexpected, or maybe you initiate it, but change is inevitable and change will happen. According to some of the feedback that I've received, many people are afraid of change for varying reasons. And let me interject this thought right here. I was reading a book today. I've been reading this book called How to Change When Change is Hard. That's the name of the book that I'm reading, How to Change When Change is Hard. And one of the things that the authors pointed out is not so much that people are afraid of change. It's more so that they want clarity. They want clarity and they want to understand what's the end point. That's what they want. If they could have clarity, if they could have details, then it's not that they are afraid, but they would like more clarity concerning change. So I'm here as the Change Navigator, as your pivot partner to help you work through your fears, to help you simplify what seems to be complex as it relates to change, and to help you to begin to live a life of joy and fulfillment once you implement those necessary changes. Hey, Kaylee. Hey, Felicia. So in its simplest form, and for the purpose of what I'm discussing, according to dictionary.com, pivot means to turn. It means to turn. That's it. The other definition it provided as it relates to basketball is to keep one foot in place while holding the ball and moving the other foot forward in one step in any direction. In any direction. You get that? In any direction, whether it's forwards, whether it's backwards, whether it's to your left or to your right. That's what pivot is. So I remember when I started learning how to play basketball and about the fundamentals of the game in middle school, my coach at the time, the late Mrs. Frances Leday, she taught us to pivot, especially when we were trapped in a corner, especially when we were facing a turnover. And so if you didn't catch Tuesday's segment, that segment was about the purpose of the pivot. And one of the purposes that I highlighted, the purpose of the pivot is to give you extra space. And so I asked several questions regarding that. How many of you have used this extra space, have used this downtime, this forced stay-at-home time, this forced layoff to think and to create? If you haven't been able to work, or if you've started working from home, if something about your normal daily routine changed during this pandemic, how have you used this extra space, this downtime, this forced stay-at-home time to think and to create? How did you pivot? Okay, what consumed your mind during this time? Were you able to think? Maybe you were able to clear some things on your to-do list. Were you able to create? All right. Maybe you were able to do something that you've always wanted to do, or maybe you didn't do it, but you started increasing your skill set and your knowledge base to be able to do what you've always wanted to do. I'm here to celebrate all victories, okay? All changes that you've made during this pandemic. Anyway, you decided to pivot into a better life, all right? Even if you chose to guard your peace, all right, that's a change. If you chose to guard your peace, if you chose to decide, hey, I'm not letting anybody come in and disrupt what I have. I'm not letting anybody in my space that will disrupt my peace, that will bring negative energy. I'm not doing that. So if you made that change, that's a huge victory, because that's a better place for your mental health. And that's a huge victory. And we all know that our mental health was challenged during this time, okay? It was challenged. It was almost targeted during this time because our lives changed so much and changed so much like at the drop of a dime. So we had to adjust to so many things that were not our normal, okay? If you chose to pivot to a place of financial stability and discipline, that's a huge victory as well. I get it. Everyone did not launch a new business, but I definitely don't want to minimize what you've done. So let me pause. If you're watching right now, I celebrate you. I celebrate any change that you've made during this pandemic. I had someone else commented on the segment Tuesday night, and she said, Tuesday afternoon, I'm sorry. She said that she came to a realization about some things. And that's what time and space does. It gives you time to think. It gives you time to reevaluate, and it gives you time to pause and realize what's important, what's not important, what's an extra weight, some things that you can get rid of. Okay. So now, number one, the purpose of the pivot is to give you extra space. But tonight we're going to focus on number two. Like I said, Tuesday I taught on number one, to give you extra space. Tonight we're focusing on number two, which is the purpose of the pivot is to give you an alternative. All right. It is to give you an alternative. Y'all can write that down. I hope you came here with your minds open. Maybe you have a phone. You can take some notes or a notepad. The purpose of the pivot is to give you an alternative. I shared that I wrote about all of this about 4 months ago when I was initially laid off from my job, but I've had to pivot and put this thing into practice these last 2 days. All right. So I wrote about it 4 months ago, but the timing is right to release it. So the pivot is to give you an alternative, meaning while you are trying to make a decision to get out of trouble, it's to give you an alternative. Okay. So Monday night during my prayer call, I was doing that I do on Facebook Live, because on Mondays, that's specifically for prayer. Tuesdays and Thursdays are teachings. This is totally different from the prayer call. Okay. So if you got on thinking it was a prayer call, that's not what this is about. This is really about teaching. This is about help and making your life better. All right. So as I was doing my Facebook Live prayer call, 2 different devices, my phone and the other phone, both messed up at the same time. So my Facebook Live video froze. All right. From what I considered to be normally a good spot in here, it literally froze, and I usually don't have problems in that area. It froze, and then when I touched my phone, touched the other phone that I was on, where I was hosting the call, it hung up. Right. So I had the Facebook Live video to freeze and just end, and then the phone call ended. Now, in that moment, I knew that I could not panic, right? But I did, low key, I did panic, right? But I also knew that I had to pivot. I had to find an alternative in that moment. I had to quickly move everything to a different location, to another location that I considered to have a good internet connection, but I had to quickly move. Then I also had to dial in. That was hectic because I don't know my daughter's lock code. So I had to get her to come in there quickly, had to dial in and then go back live again. But I could not allow technology to prevent me from fulfilling my purpose and my commitment, because it's bigger than technology. All right. It's bigger than technology, and technology will frustrate us during this time. During this pandemic, we've been talking about the blessing of technology because it allows us to still be able to do our jobs and to connect with people. But what do you do when technology prevents you from doing your job and prevents you from connecting with people? What do you do during that time? I mean, we've talked about it. Technology is great right now. We're still able to connect. We're still able to work from home. We're still able to do so much stuff, school, everything. And then, but what do you do when technology prevents you from connecting and it prevents you from doing your job. You pivot. You find an alternative. You take the time, even if it's a split second, you have to think about an alternative. What's better than what I'm doing right now? That's what you have to ask yourself. What's better than what I'm doing right now? Because either I can sit here, I can stay here and be frustrated, or I can figure out an alternative. What's better than what I'm doing right now? So when you are faced with a barrier, do you give in to the barrier and forget your commitment or purpose in the moment? That's a question, all right? When you are faced with a barrier, do you forget your commitment and your purpose in that moment? Yes or no? Then how can you respond differently next time? Because here's the thing. How can you respond differently next time? Because a challenge is going to present itself again. So you have to figure out a way. Let's say you got frustrated and you just said, okay, forget this. I'm done for the day. Just forget it. Okay, well, next time, I guarantee you are going to be faced with a similar situation. So you should start thinking now, how can I respond differently next time? Remember, when a problem presents itself, a solution is also present. I need y'all to get that. When a problem presents itself, a solution is also present. If you pause long enough to think past the barrier, there is a solution. All right? When a problem presents itself, a solution is also present. And if you pause to think long enough to think past the barrier, you will discover the solution. So, have you allowed something frustrating, something totally unexpected to prevent you from fulfilling your purpose and your commitment? I see you, Carlos. That is a word for you. Good. I'm glad it's helping you. I'm teaching from experience. Have you allowed something frustrating, something totally unexpected, something beyond your control to prevent you from fulfilling your purpose and your commitment? Because I realized after working through it, I could have easily allowed my frustration to stop me. All right. However, I chose to pivot and to push past the frustration and to find an alternative. Because remember, number 2, the purpose of the pivot is to give you an alternative. And then I had a quick reality check. You know, after everything was over, after I finished the call, I had a question. Am I committed to my purpose and my commitment, or is my commitment only predicated on the availability of technology? Is my commitment only predicated upon the fact that if there's no barriers? Because if I'm only doing it when things are going well, then I'm not really bought in. I'm not really sold into it. But I have to be sold in and bought into it until I can work through the barriers, until I can find an alternative to still fulfill the purpose and the commitment. Also, if you notice on Tuesday, the first pivot conversation was held at 12:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Tonight is at 6 p.m. I had to find an alternative because I'm trying to figure out what works. I'm trying to figure out the best way to reach people. So I couldn't continue to do it at 12:30 because then I thought, hey, people are going back to work now. That may not be a good time. So let's do something different. Let's find an alternative to still be committed to the purpose of what I'm doing. So that's why I did it at 6 p.m. tonight. So I'm trying to determine the effectiveness of these pivot conversations. I'm also learning through trial and error about what really works. So tonight, you all are viewing as well as experiencing my pivot in action. You are viewing and experiencing my pivot in action. My pivot of point number 2 of finding an alternative. Now, here's the thing. The alternative does not take away from the overall purpose. However, the alternative gives you additional data and experience to add to the opportunity. All right. The alternative does not take away from the overall purpose. However, the alternative gives you additional data and experience to add to the opportunity. I read something yesterday and it stuck out. It said, big problems, big changes are solved with small solutions. Something small can have a big impact on a huge problem. Do y'all get that? A lot of times we're faced with big problems and we're thinking that, oh my gosh, we have to come up with this big solution. We have to figure out this big, like, monumental solution to a big problem. No, big problems are solved with small solutions. So something small can have a big impact on a huge problem. Something small can have a big impact on a huge change that you want to make in your life. Last thing before we get off. All right, I want you to think about this. You can write it down and go back and work through it later. But here's what I want you to think about. 3 areas, 3 questions. What is the area in your life that you feel the most stagnation? All right. What is the area in your life that you feel the most stagnation? You don't have to tell me. I just want you to think about it. I want you to write it down. Now, if you want to, you can feel free to post it in the comments, but that's what I want you to think about. What is the area in your life that you feel the most stagnation? Number 2, how can you pivot? What can you do? What's the alternative to the stagnation? It's all one question. Question number 2, how can you pivot? What can you do? What's the alternative to that stagnation? And number 3, we're going to dig a little deeper. What would you like your life to look like if you were not stagnant in that area? How would your life look in your mind if you were not stagnant in that area? Okay? So I want you to all to think about those 3 questions. I want you to write about it and really just, put your thought energy into it. Really just be honest with yourself and work through these questions. I want you to take the time to think about it. If you'd like, you can email me at thechangenavigator@gmail.com and we can talk about it. I'd love to be your pivot partner through this. I'd love to be the person to help you remain accountable to some changes that you'd like to make in your life. All right. Are there any questions or comments from me? Any questions or comments for me? All right. Well, I don't see any questions or comments on the screen. So I'm going to end this segment of Pivot Conversations Part 2. If you're just logging on, I ask that you just go back and watch the replay and start from the beginning so you can hear what I've shared on tonight. And I will be doing this again. Oh, repeat the 3 questions. Okay. What is the area in your life that you feel the most stagnation? It's number 1. What is the area in your life that you feel the most stagnation? That you feel stuck? Number 2, how can you pivot? What can you do? What's the alternative to that stagnation? How can you pivot? What can you do? What's the alternative to that stagnation? And then number 3, we're going to dig a little deeper. What would your life look like if you were not stagnant in that area? That's the miracle question. What would your life look like if that area was perfect? All right. Did you get that, Shantae? Did you get those questions? Anybody else? Questions, comments? You're welcome. Okay. Well, thank you all for tuning in, and looks like the feedback is better at 6 p.m. So I will do this on Tuesday at 6 p.m. Also, if you have not checked it out, I have a podcast. It's called the Change Navigator. The podcast is on all major media outlets. It's on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Radio Public. Anyway, just type in the search, just type in the Change Navigator, and you can check out the podcast, and you can let me know what you think. I'm talking about change. That's what we're focusing on. We're not focusing on organizational change. We are focusing on individual change, how to make changes in your life to live a better life. So like I said, I want to help you navigate through some things. I want to be your pivot partner as you navigate through some changes in your life. I look forward to speaking with you all again on next Tuesday. All right. You all have a good night and a great weekend, and God bless.